Okay, here I am. Hello and good morning. Sorry I'm running a little late getting started. I had to get my tea steeping, and I put too much water in the kettle, so it was taking a really long time to get hot. So I apologize for that, but I needed to get warm. I'm really cold out here. So cool. Let me turn off the music and say good morning to you all. Here's the slideshow for today, and I will share this momentarily in Discord. So anyway, good morning. Welcome to the electronic literature class at the University of Mary Washington. I am the professor, Zach Whalen, and I am usually the professor. I am always the professor. So hello, good to see you all. If you don't mind, as usual, if you can, I always appreciate if you say hello on the thing. So good morning. Yeah, it looks like many of you already have. So good. Yeah, happy Monday. It is a Monday morning, and it's okay for it to be Monday today. Let me see. So, yeah, you know what? I can actually. I'm fixing my glare over here. The bird cam is on, obviously. So over there, if you do see a bird, let me know so I can go full screen. Like I've got it set up so I can just jump like that if I need to, if something exciting happens. What's happening is I refilled the seed this morning, and it's the only bird feeder I refilled. So I think that's why I've seen a fair amount of activity today. So could be pretty exciting, I guess, or not. I don't know. But it's something that I always enjoy. I'm just gonna crop my. Oops. I'm gonna crop my side here so that I don't have to worry too much. Sorry, I'm adjusting my OBS a little bit here so I don't have to worry too much about the glare there. Sorry, it just kind of takes me on a little ride there. There we go. That's good enough. Okay, so hello. Let me know if you see anything on the bird cam. But I do want to get into things today. This is Monday of week 3, and so we're talking about electronic literature in terms of genre. We've gotten started with Scott Redberg's book, Electronic Literature, so hopefully you've read chapter 1. I have some slides here with some thoughts and expansions on a few of his ideas to help explain them, and hopefully it makes sense to you already, and we can have a bit of a conversation about it. Well, not today, but Wednesday we could have a conversation about it. Today I'm going to be talking with several things. So some reminders. Oh yeah, let me share these slides in here. I'm going to share these slides in Discord just in case you would prefer to look at them that way on your own, and also then you can have a copy for yourself. Here's the slides for today, and I will also put these in Canvas. So there you go. Some reminders. So you've got homework due today. It's standard options. This same set of standard options is also the homework that's due for Wednesday, and in many cases throughout the semester that will be the standard option, and that will be just what you can do for every day that there's homework due. So I have a few things to say about those. I haven't looked at them yet, but mainly make sure that you've submitted something. Like if you did it in, one of the options is to actually write something into Canvas, and that's fine. If you did that, that's all you need to do. If you submitted something in Discord, like in the Discoveries channel or the Memes channel, please share that or tell me about that in Canvas so that I know you did it. Also, that becomes something that we can look at later on if we need to reference it for some reason. We can understand like what you were doing at different points in the semester. So you don't have to repost the same thing. Just sort of say, here's what I did, and that'll be fine. So that's in Canvas. Same set of options are due Wednesday. If you have any questions about it, let me know. But lots of good options that you can hopefully find useful. Hey, Cardinal, awesome. Sorry, let's just switch to the bird cam real quick. I heard it out there. I didn't want to open the window and scare him away, but that's the male cardinal. I've never actually seen him fly up to the feeder like that, so he's kind of posing there, it looks like. Huh, that's cool. Okay. I'm actually here too if I want to be. But he's kind of like interesting how he's just sort of sticking his wings out there like that, just sort of perching. Okay, well, hopefully he stays there for a minute. There's a lot of other birds flying around, so I'm going to switch back to the small view. But yeah, enjoy, I guess, checking out the cardinal while I continue talking. So yeah, there he is. He's turned around. Hey, buddy. Okay, so so another reminder is that if you are in the if you're in the odd face-to-face cohorts, so if you are planning to attend face-to-face when you can, but you did not attend last week, it's your turn this coming Wednesday. So please plan to join me in HCC 329 at 11:20 for this section, 10:10 for the section 1 in case anyone in section 1 is watching right now. But make sure you know which is which basically, and just show up at HCC 329. Please wear a mask. In fact, you have to wear a mask or I will have to ask you to leave. If you have not been or maybe you've already been to a face-to-face class this semester, but the rules are you have to wear a mask, obviously. Once you're in your designated area, you'll see there's 9 chairs in the room. You just pick one and stay there. But as you walk in, there's a tub of sanitizing wipes. So grab one of those, wipe down your desk as you sit down, and then reverse that process on the way out. So basically, as near the end of class, I'll kind of remind you all to go get those, and then wipe it out, and then you can go. So. Yeah, that's great, Loretta. I see your comment on Twitch. Yeah, male cardinals can be really aggressive like that. I've seen them do that too. I had one that used to pack up my my car side rear view mirror. I think they see it and they think, oh, there's another bird, I'm going to fight it. And they're entertaining. But I've never seen this one actually come up to the feeder. He always hangs out on the ground, and the female comes up to the feeder. At least I'm pretty sure that's the male, right? I mean, he's got some kind of darker. Yeah, that's the male. I mean, he's a little bit brownish. Like the females are a lot browner than the males, although the males can have a little bit of brown if they're younger, I think. Anyway, a striking bird. They're very common, but they're really kind of cool looking, and I always it's state bird, right? State bird of Virginia. Anyway, so come on Wednesday if you have any questions about how that's going to go. Let me know. My plan is to do Zoom from there again, but having done it last week and it was, it went kind of okay at best. I want to think about that a little bit more and make sure that that's going to work well for everybody. I will probably start off, since the goal from Wednesday will be to review for the quiz, I'll probably start off just like live stream, like on Zoom and in person, fielding questions and making sure everyone's good to go there. But then once I kind of send the Zoom people off on their own, I will probably appoint a leader, a discussion leader. Like, this won't be a huge responsibility. It would just be someone to pose the questions and kind of organize the time there, just to kind of get through that in a way that's useful. Yeah, so that's Wednesday. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the quiz. So there's a quiz comes this week, and these quizzes are kind of significant for this class. They're kind of like exams, but they're several of them, so they're spread out and they're kind of small, but they're not like it's like not like a midterm exam, but it's like pieces of a midterm exam spread out throughout the semester. So let me say a few words about the quiz. It's going to open up after class on Wednesday, so probably like 1 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, and it will close Friday morning before class. So you'll have like 36 hours or so to do that. I think that should be enough. So let me say a few things about the quiz, and if you have questions about it, they might be about to be answered, or we can talk more about it on Wednesday, or you can post them now in either Twitch or Discord chat. So it is going to be open notes in the sense that you've got a Google Doc, which is your collaborative Google Doc for this section. You've got the textbook, right? So you've got the actual book. You've got the slides like this one. You've got my lectures, and you've got anything else that's in Canvas available for you to consult while you complete the quiz. I'll probably say a few more words about what not to do, but basically you're on your honor to work on your own as you complete this quiz. So that means don't just sort of tell everyone what the right answers are, if that makes sense. Like if you've already done it, you'll see it pop up telling you whether the answers are right or not. I think I've got it set that way. I might change that actually, come to think of it. But in any case, don't tell people don't tell people the answers, basically. Like you can talk about it if you have any questions or you're trying to review terms or something. Like that's fine. Like that's essentially studying together. But I don't want you to like do someone else's quiz for them. So, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So it's going to be about 10 questions. I haven't written it yet, so I'm not sure. But these questions will probably involve some multiple choice, some matching, and the matching will probably be things like matching a genre to a example or a description, or maybe even matching an author to a work. So make sure you kind of know both of those things. There will be some essay type questions, and those are no, Bobby, it's not timed. That was actually my next bullet point, I think. And there will be some essay questions, which are going to be open-ended kind of questions, but with a pretty specific sense of what I want in those. In other words, these are going to be opportunities for you to show me that you understand things. So I want to see you put it in your own words, that kind of thing. So they will be fairly, I guess, narrow as far as essay questions go, if that makes sense, but they will be things that you write yourself. There is no time limit once you've started other than the due date. So I think the way that it works in Canvas is if you're working and then the due date hits, then it just submits it for you right then. I think that's how Canvas does it. I'm not totally sure. This may be a bit of trial and error, right? Like we'll figure out. I've never done this sort of long-ranged like open quiz before, I don't think. I don't know. I use quizzes very rarely in Canvas at all, so there may be some aspects of this that I'm not totally clear on just from lack of experience. I do want to limit you to one attempt just to keep things simpler and also to kind of keep everyone on the same page with that. So one attempt, and yeah, that should be pretty clear. And overall, this is worth 40 points. I haven't talked about it much, but I'm using a point system for this class, and that's mainly just to give perspective or comparative value to different assignments in terms of how much effort to put in and how much of the semester they are meant to comprise. So these quizzes are about 4% each, and there's like 6 of them. So overall, it's a pretty significant chunk altogether, but individually, it's about 4% overall of your overall grade for these. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type. Hopefully that answers Bobby's question. I'm going to go. I need to take this tea bag out of my tea. I'll be right back. Sorry, this is Earl Grey, and I found if I leave Earl Grey in for too long, it gets bad. So I'm not a huge tea connoisseur or anything, but Earl Grey is one of the teas I drink, I guess. I don't know. It's warm, basically. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Bobby. All right, let me know if you have any more. All right, so I wanted to mention the memes because there's quite a few memes in the memes channel. Your response to the homework, I think a lot of these are really good. I just put a couple in the slides here just to show you the kinds of things that I think are good. Although there's lots of other things you can do. But I thought, this is Ced's from section 1. I thought I really appreciated, or I guess, are you section 2? I forget what section you're in, Cedric. But I just appreciated his attention to detail, and both in terms of the Scott Pilgrim reference, which is what the comic is, but also like actually doing comic lettering in the comic speech bubbles to make it look pretty natural. I think that's great. So good job on that one. But also it's referencing one of the key ideas from the book, which is that there are all of these things that we can call electronic literature, and it is a pretty long list. And even then, even considering how long it is, it's not exhaustive. Like there's plenty of other things. It's just these are the main ones that helped the founders of ELO establish their terms and start building out the idea of what the organization covers. So yeah, I also really like this one. This was Lou's electronic literature, digital literature, writing and networked and programmable media. And what you see here is that some of these definitions get more and more specific, and that specificity can have a slightly different connotation the more kind of hyper specific you end up getting. And I think that's what the meme is getting at here. So I appreciate that. If you're doing the memes, of course, that's an option for today and for Wednesday and for many other days in the semester. Just a couple general reminders or challenges. I saw a lot of you riffing on the video games are literature kind of thing and really kind of doing the same idea but with different formats. I do want to challenge you to be innovative with these and creative and try to come up with your own ideas. Try not to be derivative. That's the challenge of memes anyway, right? You want to do something that's familiar enough that people will get the joke, but also new, so that they new enough that they will laugh at it or retweet it or whatever you want from that. So that's the challenge with memes. That's something that I'll just kind of challenge you to do, because that video games as literature question is something that, I guess it showed up in the chapter, but it really wasn't one of the main ideas from the chapter. By the way, if you are interested in thinking about video games in a literary context, there is a class I teach called Games and Culture, and it is an English class, English 253, Games and Culture. I plan to teach it this coming fall, so if you're interested, check that out. The other thing related to memes I wanted to mention is a Twitter account, and I set this up when I first taught this class in spring 2019. You'll notice it actually says that this account was created in March 2018. That was because this was some other account. I have lots of accounts, and this was some other account I had created, and then I revitalized into this. But this is something I introduced pretty late in the semester in spring 2019, and so it didn't really get much content. But I think there is an audience for this kind of content, like for people that are interested in electronic literature, people that will get these jokes that are not necessarily just people in this class. For example, there's like a really big Facebook group of people that talks about electronic literature, and I think they would enjoy many of these. So I think if it's okay with you, I would like to post some of these on this Twitter page. What I did last time was I actually just gave all the students the password to this, and then I think some of them were kind of shy about actually posting their own content on it. But what I plan to do is just post some of your content if you give me permission, but without your name unless you specifically request it. So check that out. Oh, is there a wren? Oh, there's a finch. I think. Let's see. Oh man, I think that's a house finch. I'm not totally sure, but that's a pretty bird. You don't need. Oh, and they're gone. But there's the wren. Yeah, the wren is on the backside there, with like the brown head and the. I didn't know it really squeezed back in there. I didn't know it could fit back there. But yeah, that was the wren on the back. But I think that's a finch. I've not seen the finch on this feeder. I've seen the finch on the other feeders in the front yard, but not on this one. Looks like he's knocking the feed out on the ground. That's a cool looking bird. All right, cool. Let me go back. Anyway, thanks for the heads up there. You think house finch? Okay, great. Yeah. Anyway, the memes page is, I think, pretty useful. So what I did on the Discoveries channel is I just posted, because I did not actually set up a channel with that assumption that I might be sharing these outside of Discord, I just kind of posted in there and asked for permission from everyone who had posted already at that point. If it's okay with you, can I post your meme? But I want to kind of make this blanket statement going forward that and I hope this is okay with you, like if you post a meme in the Discoveries, if you post a meme in the Discord memes channel, you are implicitly giving me permission to post it on the Twitter page. I might not do all of them, or any of them, I don't know, but I will certainly do some, and I think that would be a cool way to kind of get your ideas out there. And many of them are very funny, so I think I'd like to. I would certainly like to do that. If you do not want me to do that, then you should tell me, I guess, at this point going forward. This will be more of an opt-out kind of permission structure, or just as you post it, say, like, I don't want to share this. But again, I think many of these are pretty good, so I think that would be cool to share. Okay, so let's see. Any questions on that? Let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Oh yeah, that's the Twitter page, just a picture of it. I'll probably change the image and the profile picture and stuff These were both just kind of references to other things from that came up a lot in spring 2019. They may come up again, but that face of the profile picture is, I have used that profile picture for myself in certain contexts, and I find it very funny. It's a reference that's hard to explain at this point in the semester, but that a couple months or a month or so might make more sense. Anyway, let's talk about the book, Chapter 1 of Electronic Literature by Scott Retberg, which is called Genres of Electronic Literature. And what I have over the next several slides is several basically quotes or passages from the book that I think illustrate some of the key points. And I would like to kind of talk through them, basically show you the quote, talk through and interpret some parts of it, and in a couple cases show you some examples of it so that we can kind of get these things figured out. These are the things that I think are important. So as you read, this is just a couple things generally to know about as you read this book, right? So you've got a Google Doc, and many of you have been adding to it, and I saw a pretty extensive summary or like bulleted summary of this chapter already in the Google Doc this morning, so that's great. That's definitely the kind of thing you can do, and always an option if you want to do that for homework. So if you do that for your homework, just tell me in Canvas that you did that. But it would be great for at least one person every time we have an assigned reading to do that, so that it's all there in our Google Docs. So definitely take advantage of that if you are able to. Another thing that's an option is the annotatable chapter in Perusall. I do have chapter 1 in there. I don't know if anyone's been able to use it or been using it to annotate it. I haven't seen any messages coming from Perusall this morning, but I haven't really checked, so maybe they have been. But I wanted to tell you that I heard back from Scott Retberg this morning, and he's giving me permission to put the whole book into Perusall. So what that means is that I can put it in there I'll probably do it chapter by chapter so it's easier to navigate. And what I can do then is like I could leave annotations to explain key terms or link to things, or I might leave you like a note saying, okay, everyone go check this thing out and then come back here and tell me what you think or something like that. I can basically structure directed activities around that book. And so I'm really interested to see that. I think that could be a really useful way to work through it, especially when you get into like chapter 2, which is fairly long, has lots of examples, and having Perusall as a way to navigate that chapter I think will be really helpful as I try to help you learn the things that are in it. And some of the examples are really cool, so I really like chapter 2 actually a lot, so I'm looking forward to it. Right, is chapter 2 combinatory poetics? I forget. I like them all, but chapter 2 is the one I like. I like the other ones too, but I like chapter 2. I'm interested in combinatory poetics, basically. It's something that I've come into being interested in somewhat more recently. Like I kind of got my wheels turning with electronic literature with hypertext fiction. I forgot to tell the story to you all, but I got into hypertext fiction and electronic literature in general sort of accidentally when I was in high school. So this is the 90s. I was writing a paper about James Joyce and the short story collection Dubliners, you may be familiar with, and I was AOL searching for things about it because that was before Google, and I happened across a webpage about not James Joyce but Michael Joyce, and I was very intrigued. So Michael Joyce is an author of hypertext fiction, and I was like, this is crazy, this is amazing. And so I got into it, and in college I did some more work. My professors in college had no idea what I was talking about, but I was pretty excited about it. I did a honors thesis on hypertext fiction, specifically focused a lot on Robert Kendall's work. And then, went on to graduate school. I was able to work with J. Yellowlees Douglas, who is cited in this chapter. She was my advisor at first, so she kind of got me into it at the graduate school level, and then went on to other things for my PhD, slightly different, but in the field of game studies, and that's kind of how I ended up here. Anyway, sort of a long story short there, but in any case, that was a pretty wide tangent there. Perusall is going to be really useful, I hope. The other thing that I think is going to be really useful, of course, Discord is always useful, hopefully, to confer and talk about things. I'm sorry to hear the bookstore canceled your order, Loretta. I just saw your comment on Twitch. That's awkward. They shouldn't do that, but I'm glad you're being able to get a copy. So this is ELMSIP. So ELMSIP is a database, and I already forgot what it stands for, but someone did post it in section 1. They were able to look it up. ELMSIP is a database, and what's really cool about ELMSIP is that it is a database of both creative works and critical or scholarly works, and it lets us connect the dots. So it's the kind of thing where it's got an example about, for example, it's mentioning shebang, right? So ironically, I have that book right here. So this is that book, shebang. And what you can do is you can read about it, and then you can find critical writing that references this work. And so this includes things like the book we're reading, Electronic Literature. So this works both ways. So you can actually start on Electronic Literature, this book, and then you can read about all of the works that it cites. So it's a nice arrangement here, and you can really learn a lot about these things kind of back and forth and going both ways. It's also organized by chapter. How do I get to the chapter 1? Is it organized down here? Yeah, so yeah, it's down here. These are the chapters. So for chapter 1, these are the people that are referenced in chapter 1. These are the creative works, which is not many for this chapter because this is more like foundational theoretical and then exemplary. But these are some of the works referenced here. I think all of them. And then this is a lot of the critical writing, which is quite a bit more in this opening chapter, quite a bit more than later chapters. So this is a really useful way to find things that are referenced in the book. With perusal, I will also be able to link directly to some things, and in several cases, I will have to both link to it and then explain it. So I will be doing that in perusal when it's necessary to. But yeah, so there we go. So this is going to be continuing to kind of expand our idea of the book, and really this is the rest of the book. Like the book that we read is one thing, but then it's all of this network of citation that really comprises the scholarly project that Scott Redberg has put together for us. So I think it's really useful to have that in the background. Okay, so I wanted to start in terms of working through the chapter actually backwards. Like the end of the chapter here is actually this, poses this question and offers several interesting answers to the question, why read electronic literature? I've got several quotes here. I think these are really good, and I'm hopeful that they make sense to you as well, because you might still be wondering that. Like you've seen some things, you've seen some examples, you might be thinking, oh, this stuff is interesting, but kind of weird. Like what's the point? Perhaps these things will help. I think also just the more you see it, the better, better you'll feel about it. But there is a really important sense of purpose here that I really believe as well, and I want to underscore here, that electronic literature helps us to understand how digital technologies and digital culture impact writing in the broadest sense. So we are in a culture of writing. Like we are writing all the time, emails, Facebook statuses, tweets, whatever. We're reading all the time. We are an incredibly literate, hyper-literate culture. And that hyperliteracy really comes from and is enabled by digital technology. That's even more the case now because many of us, that's the only way we have to connect with other people. And we live with digital technology as the fabric of our lives. And whether we think critically about that or not, it's just there. Like it's just part of our life. It's differentiated, obviously. We have different levels and different reasons, but ultimately we can't escape digital technology at this point. So I think that actually there was a better, this one's probably a better explanation of that idea. Given the fact that we live with and among and construct our lives around the possibilities created by electronic technology, it absolutely makes sense that we should be creating literature that speaks to that involvement to help us explain ourselves to ourselves. That's ultimately what literature has always been about. It's always been about trying to understand what it means to be human right now. And being human right now just literally means being cyber human. Like we've all already crossed the cybernetic. I mean, we're all living with this stuff. And so, of course, our literature should reflect that. Of course, our literature should come from that life that we live and that identity that we share. So that makes sense to me. So as he says here, the study of these works provides us with opportunities to consider what is happening to our situation within a world increasingly mediated by digital technology. And that's true. So when we talk about things like Flash, right? So when we talk about Flash in the context of electronic literature, we can talk about, well, it's this thing that doesn't work anymore. And it's frustrating because it became obsolete and now we can't access certain things. And so that is a problem from an electronic literary sense. But it also raises this question, like, why did it exist in the beginning? Why doesn't it work now? Why did Adobe try to stop supporting it instead of patching it, right? They had to make a decision there. So why are we locked in now to this proprietary platform? Why were we? And so we can certainly see the consequences of being locked into this proprietary compiled format that we cannot reverse engineer. Well, we can reverse engineer it, but we can't look at the source code and figure out how it works because it's proprietary. We're not allowed to. So that gets us away from just the specific implications for electronic literature to the bigger implications for digital culture. What if we're making things now, how can we make things now that aren't going to have the same problem in 20 years? There are ways, probably. HTML5 is an open format, so thankfully those works will likely continue to be, likely remain durable in the sense that as long as HTML works, there's clarity in terms of how to do that. So, there are best practices now that people do to try to prevent that from happening, but those best practices apply to all kinds of anywhere where you're creating content, not just in the context of literature or where you're consuming content. So anyway, that's kind of a soapbox position to take, but I feel like we have to pay attention to this stuff. And electronic literature gives us a way to pay attention to things that we might not otherwise be aware of. So yeah, creative potentialities too. This idea that there are these different things we can do with digital media, and whether or not we choose to make literature with it, okay, that's a different question. I mean, the point is to know that these things are possible and these things are out there. Okay, so let's talk about genres then, and we've got a sense of genre from the Google Doc, which I don't have pulled up, but you probably do, or you've seen it. The Google Doc has quite a few genres listed in it. We started with Catherine Hale's list, and that's the one that informs Scott Rutberg's as well. A few more differences, like he separates out combinatory poetics and kinetic poetry, which makes sense, I think. But other terms like hypertext fiction, interactive fiction, locative narrative, those things are the same, pretty much. So, it's all good, right? The big question though that he takes on in this chapter is not what are these different genres, but why are we talking about genre and what does that do for us? So I think there's a lot of really useful points here, and this is actually the last one I wanted to get to. I want to start with this one. He says genre provides a map to a certain territory even as the process of mapping also defines the territory. So if you enter this class having no idea what electronic literature is, or you start reading this book having no idea what electronic literature is, these terms, this map of genres tells us, okay, we're looking at this kind of thing and this kind of thing and this kind of thing, and we could plot that out or think of it cartographically, like as a map. Like we could think of it as a place that we're exploring, a place you haven't been to, or a place that if you have been there, you didn't recognize it for what it was. And so we can think of it as a journey that we're going on into this land of electronic literature. And it probably is an unusual journey or an unfamiliar land for many of you. And that's fine. That's why we need a map, and that's why genre helps us find our way through that, right? To really kind of hash that metaphor. There's also this quote is kind of building on a lot of things, but I was interested more in the latter part of this quote, where if you think about things like snack time, versus things like Robert Kindle's penetration, the first thing you need to figure out before you start trying to decide what is this about? Am I playing as a dog? Is this this imagery of metaphor for immigration? Like before you can even start interpreting, you have to figure out what the heck to do with it. The how to read, or the traversal question, like how do you traverse this text? And one of the things that genre does when we're talking about electronic literature is it gives you a specific set of tools. Like it gives you a specific thing you can do first when you recognize what genre you're working with. So given snack time, for example, as you know from having seen it, you type commands to your character and the character does those things. So that means the next time you see a work that has that similar structure, that has that little cursor waiting for you to type, you will know that you can type there and you can try to get your character to do different things. There will be different purposes, different kinds of things you can do, and so on. But knowing that was interactive fiction, and that when I give you Photopia, it is also interactive fiction, meaning that you can type there and you can see things happen, you will already know how to do just the basics of that by having already seen it and by knowing the name for it. Knowing that that's interactive fiction, parser-based interactive fiction specifically, that gives you that tool, or that's a tool that you have now in your Readerly toolkit to be able to approach that kind of thing. So that's what genre is doing here as well. It's saying, here's a way in, right? The other thing that it does, and this is a bit more of an agenda, and I really like this claim too, because this is something you might also have been thinking about, and in some of the memes kind of picked up on this a little bit too. I think this idea that there's a sense of trying to prove that this material that we're looking at is really worth spending our time on, and that's a kind of question or a kind of doubt that someone compared to like the way some people might be somewhat suspicious of fan fiction. I would say it's more like the way people are somewhat suspicious of like experimental literature. I think there's a more kind of lingering questions about that in the context of literary scholarship. But thinking again about this sort of territory. What this quote is saying here is that rather than understanding electronic literature as an undifferentiated mass of experimental literary practices and digital media, by naming these genres and linking them to historical context, we also make certain claims to legitimacy. So naming these genres, again, it gives us that signpost that like we're going this way on the map, but it also helps us understand that these are things that come from somewhere. Like interactive fiction comes from fiction, hypertext fiction comes from fiction, e-poetry comes from poetry. So these are things that are building off of what's already there. They're not just totally new, they aren't totally bizarre, they aren't totally off in their own world, but they are actually connected to literary traditions and contexts that already exist and have existed for decades. By doing that, that also makes it easier to think about them in terms of legitimacy, because we can say this is making a similar kind of intervention to this other work that's already been recognized or talked about, and so we can say this is a new thing that's doing the same kind of thing, and help us have those conversations a little bit more easily. And that is a big, especially in chapter 2 for this book, that is a big theme, the idea of trying to connect these things to work that came before. So that's something to keep in mind when you look at it, is oftentimes you'll be talking about an example and it might be from the 1920s, and so that kind of thing isn't electronic literature per se, but it's certainly a prehistoric an ancestor, a precursor to these things by doing the same kind of things, especially when we talk about combinatorics. So combinatorics, you don't need a computer to do certain kinds of combinatoric composition methods, and so we'll see some examples of that existed well before computers. So anyway, I think this might be the most important one. We're trying to understand these as part of a literary legacy, but ultimately these are useful. These are heuristics. Okay, so the other thing going on in this chapter is trying to define electronic literature. There are several proposed synonyms and pseudo-synonyms. Hypertext, e-poetry, those are both things that are included under the big umbrella or the big Venn diagram of electronic literature. Cybertext, digital literature, those are good synonyms, or those often mean about the same thing. Depends on who's talking and for what reason exactly. Digital media, of course, is the even bigger umbrella that includes all kinds of things like video games and net art and other things that are not exactly literary but are worth talking about. So these are terms you'll see. The main thing that I think you hopefully know by now is we're not talking about ebooks. So we're not talking about a Kindle book that you buy and you read and return after a while. Although there can be interesting examples of those. Those can have digital literary or like e-literary components to them. That's pretty rare. Usually we're talking about other things. When we look at ebooks, we're usually looking at books that are just our books already, literary books or nonfiction books or whatever, that are presented in a way that's convenient to access on a digital form. But it's there for convenience and not for some essential quality that makes it literary, which is the case with electronic literature. Okay, so some adjacent terms, some things that are worth knowing about. Dada, surrealism, letterism, visual poetry, sound poetry, Oulipo. These are these precursors I was just talking about. Some of these go back to the early 20th century, so well before computers, but they have examples of work generated in these communities, and with these terms, I think we'll have a lot to say to electronic literature. I think these are we'll get to these later, especially Oulipo. All right, so I think why define electronic literature is also pretty interesting. We have several. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides because I want to move on to an example here, but I do think there are lots of interesting nuances and valences of these definitions, and the main one that I noticed as I was looking through these is that writing is central to many of these. So if you look at, I'm kind of going back and forth between these, but yeah, so electronic literature is most simply described as new forms and genres of writing. So this is from Scott Rutberg's definition that he includes in page 2. Literature that would not be possible without the contemporary digital context. So it's writing first and foremost for Scott Rutberg. Others, let's see, literary. This is the one from the ELO's sort of formal definition. Important literary aspects, right? Noticing that this also includes context, not just capabilities. So it's not that these have to be programmed, but in some cases they are. But in all cases, at least, they reference in some way the fact that they are on a computer or by a computer or something like that. And Stephanie Strickland, she also adds this idea that that code must be part of this in some way. I think she would say that you don't have to be the one writing the code, but there is some code written somewhere in the process of what you're producing that makes the thing what it is. So, and she even says there is no way to experience a work of e-literature unless a computer is running it. And running it, that's an interesting verb and also an interesting tense for that verb, because it makes me wonder about books like this, which contain computer-generated poetry. And so the computer that generated this poetry is no longer running, but I could run the code and make it generate this poem again, but also we tend to read poetry in the present tense. So that computer is running, the fact that the computer is running it is still true, if that makes sense. I don't know, that's kind of quibbling semantics. But the point is, I'm kind of curious about those kind of things. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. This is referenced in the book, so I wanted to show it to you. It actually is it actually doesn't work, so let me show you how to make it work. If we go here to Code Movie 1, I'm following the link here, and this is also linked from Elmsip. This is where it is hosted inside of the Electronic Literature Collection, Volume 1. There are now 3 volumes of the Electronic Literature Collection. They're working on a 4th right now. I've submitted to it, so we'll see. But Volume 1 includes quite a few Flash works, and these are works that we found are, don't work anymore in many cases. So if you try to play it, you'll see it like this. You'll see the plugin is not supported or something like that. But I can play it. I have a way to play it. I'll show you. But the couple of things to kind of explain as far as background for this work that'll explain both, I think, the content of this work, but also the problem with trying to access it. So here are 2 pictures. These are 2 selfies of me, right? So this is me. I mean, there it is. You can probably recognize me from that picture. I notice I'm green screening out a little bit because of the glare. Let me see if I can just tuck that in a little bit. Yeah, that's better. But that over there on the other side, that's also me. That is the same file looked at in a different way. This way, it's being viewed in a picture viewer, and way over there on the right, it's being viewed in what's called a hex editor, which means I can look at the bytes that compose this file as bytes, and I'm seeing them. I mean, I'm not literally seeing them as bytes. Actually, I'm seeing them interpolated into hexadecimal code. But this is a common way to debug code at this level. So that's why the software that I have exists. But that's what you're seeing there, is that these are the same data but being viewed differently. And actually, that bit of data right there is just a tiny fraction of this image. So, if you were talking about this, if this is like a 6 kilobyte image or something, whatever it is, each of those pairs of letters is 2 bytes. So you would see it as it would be a lot of letters. Anyway, the point is that this is 2 ways of looking at this file. So when we actually see Code Movie 1, we will see text like this inside of that movie once it gets running. Before that, though, we will see it like this. And part of the problem is that there's a similar issue going on here with this file that comprises this movie, because it's a Flash movie, and this right here. We could look at Code Movie 1 the same way, and we can look at it as data, as bytes. But because Flash is what's called a compiled format, we cannot actually look at the source code of the Flash movie itself. We can look at the source code of the web page that hosts the movie, thankfully, so we can look at it this way. And this is the HTML that is behind the screen there. HTML is an open source format, so you can look at it this way. But we can't actually look at the code of the movie itself. We can, however, learn some things. We can actually download the file that is supposed to be loading right here. So even though it isn't loading because the Flash plugin no longer works, the file itself is still there. It is still available, and I can download it from the web browser. I can just click on it like this, and then it pops up to download. So the media is still there. It's just that the means to access it no longer exists. So what people have done is, I actually don't know who's created this project, but there's a project called Ruffle. If you go to ruffle.rs, like this. This is it. This is a emulator, which means it's trying to reverse engineer and do what Flash does to files like Code Movie 01 hexa.swf in a web browser in a way that makes it possible to see them and play them in some cases, or whatever it is they're supposed to do. So I'm going to do that for this Code Movie 1, and I will let it, once it loads, I will let it play through. Let me just make sure my audio is reasonable. So it's 4.5 megabytes. Okay, wow. Should go with some others. Sorry. No, you're right. I forgot to turn my mic back on. Thanks. Yeah, I'm back now though. So what you saw there was the visual part of the text going by, right? So, but the text wasn't readable. Like you don't read that text. You can't make sense of it as language, except that it is obviously letters and numbers. And what's interesting about it, the interest is the animation, the way it moves. The meaning of it is not exactly clear. Like we couldn't say, oh, this is a poem about something, because we don't. It's not about anything. It's the image. The text is there as image and not as text. And that is a kind of move that you frequently see in letterist poetry or concrete poetry. So it's not entirely on its own, but the fact that it's animated here definitely makes it electronic literature. This using Flash also really changes an important aspect of how you experience this work. Even though it's not interactive in the sense of hypertext, where I'm not clicking on something to make something happen, I do have a button here I can click, which is to play it again. So I think I'll play it again without the sound. It's kind of glitchy, kind of messy, right? And what's interesting and noteworthy, I think, about a Flash animation, and this is an example, is that even when it's like overwhelming and crazy or whatever, we can't control it. So if we are watching this as a YouTube video, we could click the playhead, we could move back and forth, we could skip to the end, we could switch to another tab, we could do other things to kind of change our relationship to this text. But when it's Flash, we don't have those options. And I want to argue that that's actually a significant aspect of its interactivity, in the sense that there is an expectation that is refused. Like the expectation that we think of with video and that we're used to on YouTube is that we can click, we can drag the playhead back and forth, we can pause, we can speed it up, slow it down, we can control a lot of our aspects, many of the aspects of our experience. But with Flash animation like this, not only does it look crisper because it's a vector format instead of a bitmap format. You might not be able to tell if you have high enough resolution, but I can certainly tell here. But the main factor is that you don't know how long it's going to last, and so you're kind of stuck on the train of this Flash animation as long as it asks you to be there, or as long as you can stand it, or as long as you can choose to do it. And this one was fairly short, but there are some Flash works we'll look at later on where you'll probably be asking yourself, when is this going to end? And that's part of the experience of a Flash. And I think that situation of being in that moment with that kind of work, I think is really significant. And I say significant as like it's part of the meaning of that work. So anyway, this is Flash. And so I'm glad that this one actually works in Ruffle. Many of them don't, so or they have issues. Like the other one mentioned in the same paragraph is Neo by Jim Andrews. That's actually done with Shockwave, which is like the precursor to Flash, and I don't believe there's any emulators for that yet. I'm not really sure why. I don't know as much about Shockwave, but I know Jim Andrews is working on like an HTML5 version of Neo, so like at some point perhaps that'll be available. But he's basically he has to recode the whole thing from scratch basically. So it's a big challenge. All right, so that's Ruffle there, and I think Ruffle will continue to be useful. This is the platform, by the way, that the ELO is using or trying to use to integrate with the collection. So I think their plan is, at least this is what I would do if I were them, is make it so whenever you get to this page within the collection, then there would be like a Ruffle parameter, so you'd be able to add something like here, and then it would emulate the Flash object right here in using Ruffle just right in the web page of the collection. But I don't know if they're going to do that or not. They may have some other idea. Okay, there are two more points that I want to make, but we're out of time, so I'm just going to pose these as questions. And these are questions perhaps we can revisit on Wednesday, but these are in the text and are especially talked about in some of the later sections here. What does genre do? And this is a question we've answered a little bit in terms of eLit, like why look at eLit genres, why define them. But there's a bigger question of why genre? Like what is genre anyway? And what does it do for literature? And if you look through that section of the chapter, what Scott Redberg does is he poses that question in the context of literature first, and then he says, here's what this means for electronic literature. So I think there's a lot of good things in there, especially to put this in the context of literary studies. So this is a book of literature. It's a book about literature. Literature studies is a thing that exists, and so this is a pretty clear connection to certain critical lenses and viewpoints on how to read literature and how to study literature. So I think those are some useful connections that exist in this chapter. Similarly, what is the relationship between genre, as we're talking about it here, and platform or technology? And this question of how technology works in relation to creativity is kind of a perennial question where you can look at it on kind of two ways or some combination of the two, whether basically is technology driving us or are we driving technology? And thinkers disagree on that. People that are thoughtful and interested in coming up with ideas here don't all see this the same way. So it's one of these kind of recurring interesting questions around technological determinism. Perhaps we'll have a chance to talk about that on Wednesday a little bit as well. But basically, it's the kind of latter part of this chapter. Okay, so those are things, by the way, which would be good to add into the notes if you're looking for something to do for homework for Wednesday, if you have some ideas. So. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up because it's 11:10 or 12:10, 12:12. So I need to wrap it up. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, I'll stay online for a minute, but otherwise I will see some of you in person on Wednesday. The rest of you I will see online on Wednesday. If you have questions about where to go or what to do or anything, I guess let me know. But otherwise, you've got homework due Wednesday, which is the standard homework set of options, and then the quiz will be available between Wednesday and Friday, and then we'll talk about kind of how the quiz turned out on Friday. Okay, so hope you're all doing well. I'll switch to the bird cam for a couple minutes at least, just in case somebody comes back. But thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you all have a good afternoon. Turn myself off.